All right, there we go. Okay, so our final film, Corners of the Earth, Kamchatka. Who knows where Kamchatka is? Kamchatka Peninsula, all that? Okay, good. Little geography lesson. It gives me great pleasure to bring out co-director Guy Williment. Guy, there you are. Round of applause, everybody. Welcome again. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, you're dressed like you're in Sydney. It's
It's pretty cold today.
Okay, so I was saying I always obviously prefer to see the film, but we're going to watch it together after this. So I'm just going to dive right into it. As a co-director, a place as remote, you come from Avalon Beach, just outside of Sydney. How do you end up on a project going after the shred in Kamchatka?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So my best mate, Spencer Frost, he was co-director with me. We grew up in, like you said, a small town of Avalon Beach, not too similar to here. And I guess going to nights like this when we were kids, we'd go to these film festivals and watch these epic adventure films and just be inspired and kind of want to do the same thing when we grow up. And a few years ago, we did a surf trip to Iceland, and the goal was to kind of discover waves that had never been surfed before. And when we did that trip, we kind of turned it from like a hobby to a passion thing, and then made a film from that did quite well on the festival runs. And then after that, we were like, where's next? And we were kind of looking at all the maps around the world, and unfortunately all the kind of warm water waves have been discovered, so you've kind of got to go to these far reaches of the earth now to find new waves. And we were watching Travis Rice's film, The Fourth Phase, and we saw Kamchatka in that, and there was a surf section in there and it looked pretty epic, so we kind of looked at all the maps there.
It was. I mean, I was really surprised by how good the waves were, and they weren't being utilized, safe to say, in that movie.
They weren't, yeah. So before us, there'd been two different groups of surfers that had been to Kamchatka. They'd been in the summertime, and it looked amazing. The landscape, but the waves were pretty small. We started looking at weather maps and went back 10 years on all the weather charts and the swell reports, and kind of saw that in winter they did get waves. So we reached out to the local crew in Kamchatka, a guy called Anton, who you'll see in the film, absolute legend. And he kind of just said, no one's explored the coast in the winter months. And
am I butchering it? Is it Kamchatka? Is that the Australian? Yeah, I've always said.
You can say. What were you saying?
No. I'm gonna go Kamchatka. Okay.
Kamchatka.
Kamchatka it is. So talk about some of the challenges. I know this was the second foray, you guys working together on a film. Maybe as a filmmaker going into something that's as remote as that, a little bit more difficult than Iceland. Iceland's kind of set up, even if you're going a little remote in Iceland, a little bit different story, right?
Yeah, totally. So a lot of the land in Kamchatka is military owned, so you can't access it by road. So we reached out to Anton, and he just said, you're going to need helicopters to access these parts of the coastline. So he put us in touch with a heliboarding crew over there, and they kind of just said, you're going to need a bit of cash. This is not going to be a cheap endeavor, but we can make it happen for sure. And from there, it was about 8 months of planning every single day. Spenny and I were on the computer making calls with Anton and just trying to get it off the ground. And then the visas was a bit of a nightmare. We didn't actually get our visas approved until 4 days before we were meant to fly out. So we had tickets booked, insurances, everything in order, bought a lot of camera gear, and thankfully it came through last minute. Yeah,
maybe speak to that too. When you're doing these remotes, bringing in the gear, and you're in a place where you don't have stuff at your disposal, right? You have to be fairly turnkey on your own.
Yeah, I think in the past we've kind of winged it a lot where, like I said, we were just kind of passionate photographers and filmmakers, and it kind of, the road went pretty quickly, and now we're kind of doing stuff like this. And at the time we realized that we really had to plan this one out. So like I said, it was pretty much 8 months every single day trying to work it out. And the visas and then gear, I think the water's 1 degree Celsius. So I think that's about 23 Fahrenheit or 33 or 34 Fahrenheit.
It's cold. How dare you test me on arithmetic right now? No, we're not going to do that.
I think it's 34 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's cold.
Yeah.
But even, how about the bigger point? I know in the process of filming, as you were there, Russia invades Ukraine. How did that complicate, and how did it affect what you guys were doing?
Yeah, so it was very hard getting into Russia with the visa situation, just because it was coming out of COVID and everything was pretty tough and tight at the time. And yeah, like I said, it was 4 days before departure until we actually got our visas approved. And then on the flight over, we stopped in Abu Dhabi and we were getting a connecting flight to Moscow. And the news broke that Russia had invaded Ukraine and we were flying into Moscow. So we had about an hour to make a decision whether we wanted to push on with the trip or just cancel everything. And we spoke with our producer who was back in Sydney and then the crew in Kamchatka, and they just said, if you get here, we'll look after you and keep you really safe. So thankfully we pushed on, but it was, testing and difficult time.
And through the filming experience, maybe you could share a little backstory of something that we might not see in the film, or when we see the point in the film, it'd be maybe interesting to know what went into that moment per se.
Yeah, you'll see. I had a pretty near-death kind of drowning experience at one point in the film. Our goal, like I said, was to find waves that had never been surfed before, and at one point there was a big storm and swell coming in, and we got in the helicopters and flew down the coastline, and we discovered a wave that was 1 kilometre out to sea, and I was trying to shoot in the water, and I got cleaned up by this giant set that washed through, and I got washed into the rocks. And yeah, when you get flushed with water that cold, it feels like you're in an ice bath and you can't escape. So I had about a 30-minute kind of endeavour on this rocky outcrop, and then eventually the boys helped me to shore. You'll see that was really gnarly experience.
That's some serious embedded filmmaking.
Yeah, it was very real and raw while we were there.
Sure.
And you'll see that in the film.
So I always like to ask too, with a second film outing like this, you're still learning the ropes of filmmaking, but what are you hoping people take away from watching a film like this?
I think it's just to inspire, young filmmakers. I think that's what happened to us. Like I said, we'd go to these events when we were really little and just go, wow, we want to do something like that when we grow up. So if you guys can, inspire some young crew or make you want to go on your own adventure, that's kind of the goal for us.
All right. Well, we're very, very excited to see it. We thank you for sharing. I know there's a lot of buzz about this. Corners of the Earth.
Kamchatka.
See, there it is. All right. Round of applause, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Williment, co-director.